The year was 1470. The Aegean Sea slept beneath a veil of heavy fog. The air smelled of iron and salt. The wind carried the weight of storms and the whisper of oars. Beyond the horizon, faint outlines of sails appeared, hundreds of them, each marked with the white crescent of the Ottoman Empire. They glided across the waves like ghosts. The sun vanished early that day, swallowed by grey as if heaven itself wished not to witness what was coming. 17 years had passed since Constantinople fell. The jewel of Christendom, the city of emperors and saints, had become the heart of a new empire. The throne of Sultan Mehmed II, a conqueror who dreamed of ruling not only lands, but souls. For the Ottomans did not seek territory alone. They sought remembrance itself, to rewrite history, to bury old prayers beneath new laws, to replace the cross with the crescent, and to make faith a thing forgotten. It was said that the Sultan once murmured to his generals, "If we kill them, we create saints. But if we make them forget, we erase them from history." Far to the west, high in the mountains of Thessaly, there stood a small monastery clinging to the cliffs like a bird's nest. Its name was St. Catherine. It had no army, no gold, no place on any map. Only 23 nuns and a faith that refused to kneel. Each morning they rose before dawn. Their voices rose with the mist, soft hymns echoing through the valleys. They sowed barley, tended goats, copied sacred texts fading with time. To those who lived below, they were known as the candles among the rocks. For when darkness fell, the monastery glowed faintly, a beacon of prayer for a nation that had lost its capital and its hope. Their leader, Mother Elani, was once the daughter of a noble family in the Peloponnese. She had given up wealth, promise, and her own name to serve what she called the eternal light. Her eyes were deep and still, her words few and heavy. "When a people lose their capital," she said, "only faith keeps them alive." Then came the spring that smelled of ash. The sky turned grey, and from the east the sound of drums carried across the valleys. Dust rose on the horizon, the banners of the Ottoman army. At their head rode Hassan Pasha, the Sultan's most loyal general, a man hardened by conquest, who had seen cities burn and prophets silenced. They came not to parley, but to erase St. Catherine from existence. Word spread faster than the wind. Villagers packed what they could and fled into the mountains. Only the bells of the monastery remained, ringing as if to warn heaven itself. Inside, Elani gathered her sisters. She stood before the great wooden doors and spoke quietly. "Open the gates. Let no blood be spilled on holy ground." When Hassan Pasha entered, his soldiers filled the courtyard, their armor flashing in the pale light. He dismounted, looked upon the women and asked coldly, "Will you bow before the crescent moon?" Elani's voice did not tremble. "We bow only before the light." For a heartbeat the world was still. Then the gates closed behind them. History was sealed. 23 women standing against an empire. The siege began. By night the mountains burned with torches. By day, smoke and silence. Inside the monastery there was no panic, only prayer. The nuns knelt before the altar and sang.
If we die,
their voices wove through the incense smoke, rising, breaking, falling again.
but if we need,
Fear had left them. What remained was peace. The peace that visits only those who have already died to themselves. Elani stood at the window, watching the valley glow red beneath the enemy fires. She whispered, "If we die today, the world may forget our names. But if we kneel, the world will forget its light." 6 days passed. The doors were barred. No bread, no water, no mercy. On the 2nd day, their lips cracked, yet hymns still filled the air. On the 4th, their songs faded to whispers. On the 6th, a few slipped quietly from life, their hands still folded in prayer. Elani knelt beside them, dipped her fingers in their blood, and drew a cross upon the stone. "You suffered for us, Lord," she said. "Now we suffer for you." When the soldiers broke through, they did not find fear. They found faces glowing in the dark, eyes lifted upward, as if already gazing at another world. Those who lived were bound in chains. They walked 7 days to the sea. The road was jagged, strewn with bones of birds and beasts, each step a prayer, each breath a psalm. When one sister collapsed, Elani lifted her head and whispered, "Rest now. You still dwell in him." The soldiers struck them to move faster, but none cried out. They simply sang, broken voices carrying on the wind like the ghost of a hymn. When they reached Thessaloniki, only 18 remained. They were forced onto a ship bound for Constantinople, to the heart of the empire that sought to extinguish their faith. Topkapi Palace rose before them, a city of marble and gold gleaming like sunlight on a grave. To Ilani it was cold, a place where silence weighed heavier than stone. She was brought before the Sultan himself. He stood in a robe of black velvet stitched with silver. His eyes were sharp, curious, unreadable. "A woman so small," he said, "held my army for 6 days?" "You may live if you abandon your faith," Ilani answered softly. "A body that bows leaves nothing but ashes." The Sultan turned his gaze away. "Then you shall live to see your faith forgotten." The next morning, the 18 were sent into the palace as servants, their crosses torn away, their language forbidden. But the faith inside them could not be seized. There was, deep beneath the palace, an old chamber, forgotten, sealed behind a wall. At night, the nuns gathered there in secret. They knelt on cold stone and whispered the prayer, Pater Noster quies in caelis, Our Father who art in heaven. They carved crosses into the wall with shards of pottery. Their hands bled, but they carved on, each mark a breath of resistance. No one knew how long this went on. Months, years, time blurred into darkness. Then came the command, cleanse the harem of all who do not belong. After that, they were gone. No graves, no cries, only silence and a wall covered with hundreds of trembling crosses, still catching what little light could reach it. Centuries passed. Empires rose and fell. The wall slept beneath marble and dust until, in the year 2011, during restoration of Topkapi Palace, a team of archaeologists found a hidden door. When they broke through the brick and shone their flashlights inside, they froze. The beam touched stone, and hundreds of crosses appeared, small, uneven, carved deep as blood. At the center, one phrase remained clear, Lux in tenebris lucet. The light shines in the darkness. No one knows whose hand wrote it. But they understood. The light had never died, not because they survived, but because they never surrendered. The camera circles the wall. The light dims. A woman's voice rises softly, steady as prayer. Some victories are not won by the sword, but by souls who endure in silence. And in the deepest darkness of humankind, there is always a light that never dies. Black screen. Text fades in. St. Catherine Monastery, Thessaly, Greece. 23 nuns disappeared in 1482. But their faith still lives, carved in stone, shining through time.